What is up YouTube? Tom from TechStops here, coming your way, and today we're reviewing this Tamron's lens right here. It's the 18 to 270mm Di2 with image stabilization and the Piezo drive. It's the PZD version. It's an all-in-one lens ready to go on your DSLR. It's made for crop sensor bodies for Nikon, Canon and Sony mounts. And it's an all-in-one lens where you get 15 times magnification, and Tamron claims that this is the smallest, lightest 15 time magnification lens for a DSLR out there. It weighs around 415 grams or 16 ounces and retails in Australia for roughly $700 or thereabouts. We can pick it up for $700, and in the US about $650 from places like B&H Photo. It really is an affordable alternative to upgrading your camera's kit lens and getting high quality images and an ultra large zoom on your DSLR. Tamron has some fantastic lenses out there, some of which I have reviewed in the past, and they do make high quality lenses with a real focus on good image quality. The difference with this lens from the ones I've reviewed in the past, it has the PZD Piezo drive ultrasonic motor, the focusing motor, so it is super silent and it is very quick, and it pretty much compares to the USM motors in the Canon L lenses. I've got a number of the Canon L lenses, and this particular lens itself, the Tamron, focuses almost as quickly and as quietly as those lenses for almost a fraction of the cost, so you're getting really good value for money on that side. The Tamron lens that I'm reviewing here also comes with a non-PZD focusing motor. It is a little bit cheaper, but this is the one to go for in my opinion in respect to getting that high quality, ultra fast and quiet focusing motor inbuilt in the lens. So the lens is made for Canon, Nikon and Sony crop sensor bodies, so you can't put it on a full frame sensor body, but it will fit everything in the crop range. Just when you're purchasing it, make sure you purchase the particular mount for the Nikon, Canon or Sony camera that you have, or the brand that you have, because they do come with different mounts. And in respect to Canon, the usable range is 29mm wide to about 432mm, and that's taking into effect the 1.6 times crop sensor for the smaller sensor itself. And on the Nikon and Sony, you get a range of 27mm at its widest and 405mm fully zoomed in. So it still provides fantastic wide reach for those wide shots and panoramas, but you do get a lot of focal zoom there. So it's really a perfect lens for a travel photographer. If you just need to take one lens, then this is a good one, because you can still take wide angle shots, so you can get a lot of detail and a lot of information in your shots. But if you want to zoom in and either take a photo of someone on the other side of the street without them knowing you're taking it, or take some details in flowers or in a building, you can use the zoom 15 times zoom factor to really pull those details out. So perfect all-in-one lens at 450 or so grams. It is very light and it suits both the lower end DSLR bodies where they're nice and light, and it'll do just as well on the higher end DSLR bodies like the 7D. It's at home on all of those bodies, so it won't be out of place, and the build quality is exceptional as well. One thing to note, when you're zooming in and out, the actual lens does increase and reduce in length, so that's to keep in mind. And then you've got the lens hood on there, so at its widest at 18mm, it doesn't sit too far out, about 90mm out from the actual camera itself. Once you zoom all the way out to the 270 range of the actual lens, it zooms out about 70mm in length. So the the lens is about 160mm in length, and then the lens hood is about 40mm on top of that. So just something to keep in mind, that it can become quite a long lens, but when it's tucked away and when it's stored away, it is a very small lens because it just collapses in on itself to about 90mm. So the build quality, like I did touch on a little earlier, is fantastic on this lens. It's definitely well above standard, and especially for the price range, it's definitely punching above its weight. And that's something Tamron is known for, building good quality constructed lenses itself. There is no weather sealing like on Canon's L series lenses on this Tamron lens, so do keep that in mind, but that goes in line with a lot of the crop sensor bodies themselves where they don't have a lot of weather sealing itself. The actual construction is fantastic. It does have a steel plated or steel mounted mounting plate, so it does get a nice fit to the camera. In my opinion, there's nothing worse than getting a good quality lens and then having a plastic mounting plate on the back. It just doesn't feel right when you're putting it on the camera. It doesn't get that nice tight fit. So you do get the stainless steel mounting plate, which is fantastic. All the focusing and zoom rings are really built nicely. They've got a nice, smooth, fluid type motion when you turn them. But you also get a lot of feedback from the actual focus and zoom rings as well. So they're a pleasure to use. They're not too tight and not too loose, so they're just right there to get a good amount of feel, but not be too tight to quickly zoom in or focus the lens itself if you're on manual focus. But all in all, the build quality is exceptional, and for, like I keep saying, for the $700 range, it's definitely punching above its weight in that regard. If we move on to the actual performance of the lens itself, I was very happily surprised with the performance of this lens. Because of the large zoom factor of 15 times in there and the fact that it was a relatively cheap lens, I wasn't expecting exceptional results, but I was pleasantly surprised. The results were really good. In terms of sharpness, it is a very sharp lens. There was some softening on the edges at the larger aperture, the f3.5, but it really wasn't as soft as a lot of other lenses have. And then as you go into the smaller aperture ranges, it was non-existent. The softness was non-existent, and it was fine. In respect to the bokeh, it was pretty good. It is a f3.5 aperture lens at its widest, and the aperture range does reduce significantly as you zoom out. So the bokeh, as you'd expect, wouldn't be exceptional like you would get in an f2 or f2.8 or an f1.8, but you still get some pretty good blurred out shots there, and it does look really pleasant to look at. And I actually took some pretty close-up macro shots with this one, and it performed pretty well, which is surprising given that it's definitely not a macro lens and the zoom factor in there. But the bokeh and the f3.5 worked well. The only thing to note is with the aperture being at its largest at 3.5 when the lens is at 18mm, it doesn't allow as much light in as a lens with a larger aperture range, so do keep that in mind. And if you're shooting a lot of indoor photography or indoor sports, it is something to keep in mind because you will have to bump up your ISO to get the image without blurring, so keep that in mind. But if you're not after a super large aperture lens, then this is a fantastic one. And it's a catch-22 with large apertures, because if Tamron did include a constant f2.8, which would be fantastic and I'd love to see that, it would add a lot of bulk and it would also add a lot of weight and bulk, size, weight and cost to the lens, and it'll ultimately eliminate and change what this lens is, which is a take everywhere, sort of one size fits all fantastic lens. Once you add that large constant aperture in there, it becomes heavy, bulky and costly, and you're just not going to put it on your camera and take it overseas and have it on all the time, because it'll end up being very heavy and uncomfortable to use. So as much as I'd like to see a 2.8, I think Tamron's gone in the right direction at having a variable aperture lens at 3.5 through to 6.3 when you zoom into 270mm. Barrel distortion itself, almost non-existent, and it was a real pleasant surprise. It was, there was really no issues. At 18mm there was slight barrel distortion on the edges, but once you zoom into about 30mm, that was all but eliminated, and it wasn't bad in the first place, so really a non-factor whatsoever. Chromatic aberration, it's fine, really not a problem with this lens, and there's nothing really to worry about from the CA front of things. All in all, it was a really pleasantly performing lens. You get some good quality images here, whether you're doing sports photography, primarily outdoors, if you want to get some nice wide angle shots, if you want to do some landscapes, or if you've got travel photography in mind, then this is a fantastic lens to take with you. It's very affordable. You're getting a fantastic zoom focal range at 15 times, and you're just getting a well-built, constructed lens from a company that has been making fantastic lenses for some time. And if you're lucky to pick it up in its intro offer in Australia, Tamron was increasing the warranty up to 5 years, which is unheard of from any manufacturer of DSLR lenses, and that's how confident Tamron is that this is a quality lens and it will outlast anything you can throw at it. So definitely check it out. It's the Tamron 18-270mm Di2 VC PZD lens. Definitely a mouthful, but definitely check it out. You can check it out at tamron.com. $700 in Australia and around $650 in the US. If you're looking for an all-in-one, on-your-body all-the-time lens, then this is definitely a contender. This is Tom from TechStops here. Don't forget to let me know what you guys think by posting below or hitting me up on Twitter at TechStops. I'll catch you guys next time.